It's been an absolute slugfest for shareholders, but things are starting to look up for Endeavour Silver, even if the third quarter financial results on the surface don't say it. And I mean, in fairness, the headlines are ugly. A $42 million net loss on the quarter versus a loss of $17 million in the year-ago period. Not exactly attractive figures for an investor that is casually browsing. But that's why you can't just rely on the headlines, especially in this clickbait environment. Reading deeper, the bulk of that loss is related to losses on derivative contracts, as in their paper losses, which enabled the construction of their new flagship asset. Let's dive in. Endeavour Silver has published their third quarter financial results, highlighted by revenue from operations growth of 109% on a year-over-year basis to $111 million, up from $53 million. That revenue improvement follows silver ounces sold growing to 1.8 million ounces at an average price of $38.58 an ounce, while gold ounces sold amounted to 7,500 ounces at an average price of $35.50 an ounce. Comparatively, Q3 last year saw the sale of just 1 million ounces of silver at an average price of $29.63 an ounce, alongside 9,400 ounces of gold at $2,528 an ounce. A further 722,000 ounces were contributed to sales by Terronera, with those sales classified separately as pre-operating production silver equivalent ounces, which generated $31.5 million in revenue, figures which weren't included above as a result of that classification. Mine operating earnings grew 25% year over year, climbing from $12.5 million to $15.6. Despite the improvement in revenue, losses widened in the third quarter, growing from $17 million or 7 cents per share to $42 million or 14 cents per share. On an adjusted basis, net earnings went from $1.6 million or 1 cent per share to negative $2.1 million or a loss of 1 cent per share. The loss, as we mentioned in our intro, was attributed to a $39 million loss on derivative contracts, alongside an income tax expense of $4.5 million. Let's talk about that loss for a second. As part of the financing package for Terronera, Endeavour entered into a gold forward swap contract to hedge against the fluctuation in gold prices. As part of that arrangement, 68,000 ounces of gold were pre-sold at a price of $2,311, basically because the bankers demanded it to protect themselves. In plain English, what this means is that the company sells its gold at a price of $2,311 an ounce. Those big losses that show up on the income statement reflect the difference. On a per ounce basis, between the average price of gold during the quarter and that $2,300 an ounce figure, which is then multiplied by the amount of ounces sold under the swap contract that quarter. In other words, they aren't actual losses per se, but rather the difference in value between what the gold was worth and the price it was sold at. So Endeavour isn't actually having these losses in dollar terms. They're paper losses. And while it sucks, it's not like they're losing money selling that gold. They're just losing out on the upside, because none of us expected gold to trade over $4,000 an ounce just 2 years post-debt facility. A further 64,000 ounces of gold are to be sold under this arrangement, meaning financials will be impacted until the end of June 2027. Back to the financials here. EBITDA for the quarter totaled negative $12.6 million, which grew to positive $28 million on an adjusted basis. Operating cash flows, meanwhile, jumped from $4.5 million to $13.6, leading to Endeavour's cash position to grow to $57 million. However, working capital moved from positive $29 million to negative $56 on a year-over-year basis. Moving to the operations side of things, Endeavour Silver in the third quarter reported silver equivalent production growth of 88% year over year from 1.6 million ounces of silver equivalent to 3 million ounces of silver equivalent, a figure which does not include production from Terronera. Broken out, silver production amounted to 1.8 million ounces, an improvement of 102% on a year-over-year basis from 875,000 ounces. Gold production, however, declined by 22% from 9,300 ounces to 7,300. Q3 also saw the production of 5,700 tons of lead and zinc production of 3,700 tons, versus nil last year, with that production coming as a result of the addition of Kolpa to operations earlier this year. As for costing, cash cost per silver ounce rose 59% from $11.35 to $18.09 an ounce year over year, while total product costs per ounce rose from $18.65 to $28.95 an ounce. All-in sustaining costs rose from $25.82 to $30.53 an ounce. Increases here were again the result of the addition of Colpa to the production mix, which has relatively higher production costs, as well as a shift in the silver to gold production ratios at Bolañitos and Guanaceví. Higher metal prices also had an impact here, with those higher prices driving increased royalty costs and higher costs of third-party material purchased. Third-party material purchases were up 87% year over year, which had a material impact on costing, but also on ounces produced. Of course, we can't not mention Terronera, which declared commercial production the day after the end of the third quarter. The third quarter saw the new mine experience only 8 days of downtime, while exceeding an average of 90% of nameplate capacity and metal recoveries of at least 90% of projections, with the mine no longer to be classified as pre-production in Q4 and beyond. Q3 saw the mine process 146,000 tons of material at an average grade of 64 grams per ton silver and 2 grams per ton gold, at cash costs of $35.92 an ounce. Endeavour has stated that they expect 360,000 tons of material to be put through the mill over the next 6 months, with grades expected to average 122 grams per ton silver and 2.5 grams per ton gold. Higher grade zones are scheduled to be accessed by mid-2026, boosting production thereafter. Full guidance for the new mine is expected to be released in January, in line with 2026 cost and production guidance for the entire company. As for the guidance, things here are a bit messy. Guidance was provided at the beginning of the year for Guanaceví and Bolañitos on a combined basis. But in the time since, Colpa was added to the production mix, and now so too was Terronera. So we need to dig a bit to get the answers we're after. Guidance announced in early January outlined that Guanaceví and Bolañitos are to produce between 7 and 7.9 million silver equivalent ounces on a combined basis, consisting of 4.5 to 5.2 ounces of silver and 30.5 to 34,000 ounces of gold. Year to date, the two mines have produced 5.3 million silver equivalent ounces of production, meaning they are in line with guidance. Cash costs, meanwhile, were estimated to come in between $16 and $17 an ounce, while all-in sustaining costs were estimated to be between $25 and $26 an ounce, net of gold byproduct credits. And this was a little less straightforward in terms of where we sit year to date, with no combined number being provided from what we could tell. Cash costs year to date at Guanaceví have totaled $20.88 per ounce of silver, while at Bolañitos they have averaged negative $10.32 per ounce of silver, while all-in sustaining costs have averaged $28.72 an ounce at Guanaceví and $16.72 an ounce at Bolañitos. Consolidated production results included Colpa in the data, so there was no clear-cut figure in reference to the guidance provided. Alright, so let's wrap it up. It's been a slog fest for Endeavour Silver, and while we're fairly certain management is well aware of it, the high-level figures may not look the best. And with gold back on the rise again, they're not about to look much better anytime soon. But the devil is in the details here. And once you back out those swap-related losses, things don't look so bad. And with Terronera now coming into the mix, Endeavour seems to be on the upswing. Alright everybody, thanks for watching. If you want more mining earnings videos, check out our channel. We got lots of them. If there's stories you want us to cover, let us know in the comment section. And if you enjoyed this video, do me a favor, smash that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Alright everybody, thank you for watching.